Inwagata no Sahai is my name, and I'm so delighted to come your way this morning and add value to your day. We are still on our emotional intelligence series, driving workplace productivity with emotional intelligence. And you know, the pillars or components of emotional intelligence include self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And last week, we started zeroing on motivation. And that is also what we are going to continue on this morning. We'll be looking at a case scenario that is focused on a local government council in Nigeria. A local government council case scenario, using motivation and emotional intelligence component to drive employee engagement in a local government council in Nigeria. I will take that again. Using motivation, a component of emotional intelligence to drive employee engagement in a local government council in Nigeria. Now, as local government employees, you serve at the front line of governance in Nigeria. And serving on that front line of governance means that there is a strong probability that you will be encountering citizens that may be sounding very frustrated. Some of them may be very angry, and some of them may just come with attitude, that disposition that can really get on your nerves. Now, in addition to that, you are also going to be you are often faced with limited resources as a local government employee. You are faced with bureaucratic delays. Sometimes political pressure is even there in the kind of Nigerian politically polarized environments. You see situations whereby, local government employees or public servants are always faced with political pressure. Now, in such a situation where you have, very frustrating citizens to deal with, then you also have issue of slim budget to deal with. You have issues of bureaucratic bottlenecks to deal with, and then also political pressure to deal with. Your source of engagements, your source of unalloyed commitment to your work is going to only come from inner motivation. It's going to come from intrinsic motivation. And within the context of emotional intelligence, motivation is not about salary. Motivation is not about allowances. Motivation is not about grade or promotion. Now, those are extrinsic. Those are external factors. Within the context of emotional intelligence, motivation is about intrinsic drive. It is that inner drive that pushes you to perform your duty with excellence, even when no one is watching. Emotional intelligence motivation is a deep-seated passion to work for reasons that go beyond money or status. It's about your internal drive to achieve, it's about your internal drive to improve, and it's about your internal drive to serve. Emotional intelligence motivation is that fire that drives us beyond external rewards like promotions or allowances. And as an employee, emotional intelligence motivation means you setting standards for yourself, not because your supervisor or your leader is watching, not because your boss is watching, just is because you take pride in your work. This is very, very important. And for local government employees, we are going to be using this to have a conversation with you this morning, so that you can actually pull on that intrinsic motivation to be able to bring your A game to the table. And we are looking at a case scenario that focuses on the local government. Now, this is a case scenario, and it goes thus. In a local government council's Department of Environmental and Community Services, performance had dropped. Staff were coming late, complaint response times were slow, community dissatisfaction was increasing, meetings were quiet and unproductive. The surprising part, salaries were being paid. There were no major structural changes, yet engagement was low. Leadership realized something important. This was not a discipline problem. It was a motivation problem. Instead of using queries and threats, they chose a different approach. First, they reconnected employees to purpose. And this is what emotional intelligence motivation is all about. Being able to connect people to purpose, being able to connect work to purpose, being able to connect duty and tasks to purpose. And that was exactly what the leadership of this particular local government council in Nigeria did. It said first, they connected employees to purpose. A meeting was called, not to criticize, but to reflect. Staff were shown examples of communities affected by block drainage, flooding, and waste accumulation. Then they were shown areas where timely intervention had made a difference. The question asked was simple: who is affected when we delay, and who benefits when we act quickly? Suddenly, files were no longer just files. They represented families, traders, school children, and elderly residents. When people see the human impact of their work, motivation begins to rise from within. The leadership of this particular local government council in Nigeria were able to connect their work to purpose. So just like I read on the case scenario, files were no longer just files. These files, they became families, they became traders, they became school children, and elderly residents. And let me take this line on the case scenario again. It said, when people see the human impact of their work, motivation begins to rise from within. Second, leadership introduced a clear, measurable goal. And this clear, measurable goal included reduced complaint response time from 10 days to 5 within 3 months. There were weekly brief check-ins. Progress was shared openly. Responsibility was assigned clearly. Motivation increases when expectations are clear and progress is visible. Third, they introduced recognition. Not money, just acknowledgement. During monthly meetings, employees who demonstrated initiative or teamwork were publicly appreciated. A simple "well done" in front of colleagues transformed the employee. Now listen to this. Recognition validates effort, and validated effort fuels commitment. Very key. Fourth, management invited staff to contribute ideas for improvement. Employees suggested zonal accountability, faster communication channels, and better coordination between desk officers and field teams. When their suggestions were implemented, listen closely, when their suggestions were implemented, something powerful happened. Ownership increased. People commit more deeply to what they help build. Very important. Now, midway through the process, operational challenges arose. Logistics and resources constraints slowed progress. Instead of blaming staff, leadership reframed the situation. Let us focus on what we can control. Let us prioritize. Let us communicate better. By modeling resilience, management prevented discouragement. After 3 months, measurable improvements were recorded. Response times reduced significantly. Punctuality improved. Participation increased. Public complaints declined. What's changed? Not salary, not structure, not power. What's changed was internal drive, motivation. This case scenario teaches us that in public service, especially at the local government level, where we are closest to the grassroots, sustainable performance does not come from pressure alone. It comes from purpose. Remember I told you that emotional intelligence motivation is about connecting work to purpose. It's about connecting work to meaning. So this case scenario teaches us that in public service, especially at the local government level, where we are closest to the grassroots, sustainable performance does not come from pressure alone. It comes from purpose, clarity, recognition, ownership, and resilient leadership. Now, this is the closing statement. When leaders activate intrinsic motivation, engagement becomes natural, performance becomes consistent, and service delivery becomes impactful. Now, this is an amazing case scenario for us to glean lots of leadership lessons from. And don't forget this: if you want people to be well engaged, to your responsibility to just, especially in the public service, even across board in all industry, you need to ensure that you are able to tie their work, you are able to connect their work, their job to purpose. You are able to make them see a picture of how the work they are doing is adding value to humanity. And that will arouse intrinsic motivation from within them that will make them to be well engaged and have this unalloyed commitment to duty, to job, and to task. I'll be seeing you next week, Wednesday, and when I return, I will say remain amiable. Inuagata, no Sahai. Your day is so blessed. Thank you.